Let's talk about one of modern medicine's greatest achievements, something we honestly take for granted all the time: antibiotics. We're going to dive into their incredible accidental discovery, see how they wage a microscopic war on bacteria, and face the growing threat that could send us right back to a much darker time. So picture this. It's 1928. A scientist named Alexander Fleming gets back to his lab in London after a vacation, and he notices something kind of weird on a petri dish he'd forgotten about. There's this patch of mold, and all around it, the bacteria are just dead. That lucky accident? That was the birth of penicillin and the start of a total revolution in medicine. I mean, can you even imagine a world where a simple scratch could kill you? Because before antibiotics, that wasn't a what if, that was reality. A sore throat could be a death sentence. Giving birth was incredibly dangerous. It was a world where we were pretty much defenseless against these tiny, invisible predators. So how in the world did we get from that world to ours? Well, let's trace the journey from ancient folk remedies all the way to the scientific miracle that finally gave humanity a fighting chance. You know, the idea of using mold to fight infections isn't as new as you might think. We have records showing ancient Egyptians putting moldy bread on wounds thousands of years ago. But the modern age really kicked off in 1909 with Paul Ehrlich's so-called magic bullet against syphilis. And that set the stage for Fleming's game-changing discovery in 28. And look, calling it the greatest medical breakthrough, that is not an exaggeration. Not even close. The arrival of antibiotics completely changed everything. Suddenly, surgeries that were once life-threatening became routine. People started living way, way longer. Diseases that used to devastate entire communities were now treatable. It was an absolute game changer for all of us. So how do these miracle drugs actually work? Well, they have two main strategies. The first is called bactericidal. These antibiotics go straight for the kill. They directly destroy the bacteria. The other approach, bacteriostatic, is a bit more subtle. It doesn't kill the bacteria outright. It just stops them from multiplying, which gives your own immune system the upper hand to come in and clean house. All right, let's zoom all the way in. We're going inside the microscopic battlefield to see exactly how these antibiotics pull off a win. So I want you to imagine a bacterium as this tiny little fortress. Its most crucial defense is its outer wall. It's tough, it's rigid, and it keeps everything inside safe. For a lot of antibiotics, this wall is target number one. Because, if you can take down the wall, the whole fortress crumbles. And here's the brilliant part. That fortress wall is made of a material called peptidoglycan, and it's built by these little protein workers. What penicillin does is it comes in and basically handcuffs those workers, stopping construction dead in its tracks. With no one to repair the wall, it gets weak, it breaks down, and poof, the bacterium just falls apart. Okay, but what if you can't get through the wall? Well, there's another genius strategy: attack from the inside out. Shut down the bacterium's internal factories, the places where it makes all the proteins it needs to survive. See, bacteria have these tiny machines called ribosomes that build all their essential proteins. You can think of a ribosome like a little two-part assembly line. Now, some antibiotics are designed to jam one part of that assembly line, while others jam the other part. It doesn't matter which one they hit. Either way, the factory floor grinds to a halt. No new proteins means no more bacteria. Simple as that. So, when you put it all together, this war is fought on 5 main battlefronts. We've talked about attacking the cell wall and the protein factories, but antibiotics can also disrupt the cell's outer membrane, they can scramble its DNA, or even block the essential chemical reactions it needs to live. But, and this is a huge but, this is where the story takes a really dark turn. Because we've been hitting the bacteria with everything we've got for almost a century, and now they're learning how to fight back. This is the rise of the superbugs. 10 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. According to the World Health Organization, that's how many people could die every single year by 2050 from infections that our drugs just can't touch anymore. This isn't some far-off sci-fi problem. This is one of the biggest health crises facing the entire planet right now. So what exactly is antibiotic resistance? You can think of it like evolution on hyperspeed. It's when bacteria change, they adapt, they mutate in a way that lets them survive a drug that should have killed them. They're basically learning our playbook and developing a counterattack. And they do this in two main ways. Some bacteria have what's called intrinsic resistance. They were just born that way. Maybe they don't have a cell wall, so a drug that attacks cell walls is totally useless against them. But the one that's really scary is acquired resistance. This is when a vulnerable bacterium either has a random genetic mutation that saves it, or, and this is wild, it gets a piece of resistance DNA from another bacterium that's already figured out a defense. Once a bacterium gets these new defense codes, it can deploy some truly incredible tactics. It can create enzymes that literally chop the antibiotic molecule to pieces. It can install tiny pumps in its membrane to actively kick the drug out as soon as it gets in. Or it can disguise the original target, changing its cell wall or ribosomes just enough so our antibiotic can't grab on anymore. Okay, I know, that sounds incredibly bleak. But this war is not lost. We just have to get smarter. We have to adapt. And that brings us to our mission: how we fight back smarter and preserve this medical miracle for the future. You see, our most powerful weapon right now isn't some new superdrug fresh out of a lab. It's actually a new strategy. It's about using the amazing drugs we already have much, much more wisely. It's a concept called rational use. And rational use follows 4 simple but absolutely critical rules. Number 1, only use antibiotics when they're actually needed, which means for bacterial infections, not for viruses like the cold or flu. 2, use the correct antibiotic for the specific bug you're fighting. 3, use the correct dose. And 4, this one is for everyone, always finish the full course of your prescription, even when you start feeling better. That's how you make sure you get all of them. That all makes sense, right? But it brings up a really important question. With so many different kinds of bacteria and so many different drugs, how on earth do doctors know which one is the correct one? Well, the answer comes from the lab, with something called an antibiotic sensitivity test. Doctors take a sample of the bacteria causing the infection and they test it against a bunch of different antibiotics. The lab report comes back and tells them if the bug is sensitive, meaning the drug will probably work, resistant, meaning it won't, or intermediate, which means it might work maybe at a higher dose. This test is the bedrock of using antibiotics smartly. And this is so important to understand. Preserving these miracle drugs isn't just a job for scientists and doctors. It's a mission for every single one of us. Every time we don't demand antibiotics for a simple cold, every time we take our medicine exactly the way we're told, we're helping. We're reducing the pressure on bacteria to evolve and become resistant. Think about it. Fleming's discovery gave us an incredible gift. It bought us nearly a century of time. Time to live longer, healthier lives, free from the fear of so many deadly infections. The question we all have to ask ourselves now is, how are we going to use the time we have left? Are we going to squander this miracle, or are we going to work together to protect it for the generations that come after us?